So I think that most of us knew when we saw just how terrible the beta went for Marvel's Avengers that it wasn't going to be even close to a game of the year, especially with the microtransaction controversies that everyone was talking about when the game launched. But damn, Square Enix, you really went and butchered this game so terribly that it ended up selling less than Anthem. That's truly impressive. I mean, wow, congratulations for that achievement. So yeah, that's what I really wanted to talk about in this video. Square Enix reports $48 million loss following the release of the underperforming Marvel's Avengers. I wonder why it underperformed so terribly. So, driven by weak sales of Marvel's Avengers, Square Enix has posted an operating loss in its HD game segment of more than 5 billion yen, or $48 million for the second quarter of the current financial year. This information comes from the latest release of financial results for the 6-month period of April through the end of September 2020. Marvel's Avengers, a live service game developed by Crystal Dynamics, was heavily advertised and expensively produced, but was panned both by critics and the broader gaming audience. I wanted to go over to Metacritic really quickly just to take a little peek at the critic scores right now and also the user scores. So the user score is sitting at a 5.1, and I thought that we could scroll through just a couple. So the first one says, "Great story covered with repetitive gameplay and dirty business practices. The in-game currency drop rate is a joke. On average, 6 out of 20 units, and that means you can barely get stuff from the vendors." So the next review is a 1. This is terrible. They said, "Here's a quick review for you guys. The gameplay is absolute garbage and super boring. You get bored after literally 3 hours. The graphics look like a mobile game. Trash loot system doesn't make any difference, just spam all of the buttons." The next section says, "Microtransactions, tons of bugs and glitches, bad performance, boring co-op missions." I mean, let's look at the list of problems that people are listing. The next one is a 1. "If you like running through hallways fighting the same enemy over and over again, this is the game for you." The next review is a 4. Someone said, "Believe the reviews. 4 out of 10 is generous. This fucking game, it seemed like there was no way it could lose, but here we go. Watch it fail on every point. Look this game up in the dictionary under squandered opportunities." Someone did generously give it a 10 and said, "Surprisingly great. Love the campaign and a lot of the bugs fixed have made a great difference. Great job, Square Enix." They seem to be in the minority of people because we scroll down and there's 4, 0, 0, 4, 4. We have a couple of 6s and then it goes to a 2 and a 0. So headed back over to the article, it says it's the second high-profile failure of a live service game in as many years, following BioWare's Anthem in 2019. It's so sad to see yet another game be compared to Anthem, and let's be honest, there really hasn't been a lot of games compared to Anthem. There haven't been a lot of games that have failed that terribly, and unfortunately, Marvel's Avengers is definitely in that category. It says Square Enix's HD Games division is responsible for its big game releases, but not its MMOs or mobile games. Despite the losses, the HD Games division did do more business in both quarters of 2020 than in comparable periods in 2019. Square Enix hasn't reported sales numbers, though Tokyo-based games industry analyst David Gibson said in a tweet that the sales volumes were lower than Square Enix had planned, something like 60% of the expected total. He further noted that based on Square Enix's reported numbers, the game likely cost upwards of $170 million to make. Holy shit, that is a huge number. We didn't know the development costs for this game, and because I've talked about it previously, I think that we were all kind of wondering what they were, and unfortunately, yikes, that much money for this game that released in a half-assed, buggy and broken state. So David Gibson said Square Enix reported yen 6.5 billion loss for HD games driven by Marvel Avengers, would not say how many sold, but the volumes were 60% of the plan. Implies game cost over $100 million to make, but only sold 3 million or so. Ouch. Marvel's Avengers, it looks like the total cost of the game is closer to 170 million to 190 million, given they only expensed 70% of the cost in the quarter plus marketing costs. They released a game, first of all, after the Avengers hype died down, with character models that don't look like the actors at all, filled it to the brim with microtransactions and battle passes for every single character, and they promised features that weren't available day one that were supposed to be there. Why did they think that this game was going to go down well at all? Why did they think that this game was in a good enough state to sell for $60 whole? It just really sounds like they put so much money into it and they finally said, hey, we gotta launch it to make money back. We've spent so much money, we just can't keep pouring funds into this game. And unfortunately, it didn't work out the way that they planned. I don't want games to fail. Games like this, I had pre-ordered. Yes, I'll admit it. I had this game pre-ordered. I was planning to play it, and unfortunately, I canceled my pre-order just because of the terrible state that the game seemed to be in only a couple of weeks before launch. I don't want games to fail. I was looking forward to this game, but it unfortunately just wasn't deserving of a $60 purchase. So scrolling down just a little bit more to end off the article, it says the sales performance of Marvel's Avengers looks even weaker when compared to the release of Final Fantasy VII Remake in April. The delay of the PS4 exclusive game and the boost in game sales due to coronavirus bolstered that quarter's numbers. Marvel's Avengers, available on all platforms, did not nearly replicate its success. This really does suck to hear because we want companies to do good. We want companies to make good games. We want companies to be successful so they don't just kind of give up on these franchises that we really like. But unfortunately, in this case, the game was just really bad. It just wasn't even close to what people should be getting for $60. The campaign, from what I heard and from what I've seen, was only a couple of hours long. Yeah, you could kind of draw it out, but unfortunately, everything was filled with microtransactions, even if a lot of them were cosmetic. Unfortunately, it's just like it throws microtransactions in your face. The campaign isn't very long. I don't know how long they're going to keep supporting this game, to be honest. I know that they said they plan to support this game for years to come. I just don't see that happening at this point, with people not enjoying it as much as they expected, with it not selling as many copies, and we know that a huge amount of players had dropped off and stopped playing the game and went inactive. I talked about that in a previous video. I just don't see the point for them to continue to support this game, and if you're a fan of this game, that's good. I'm glad that you've enjoyed it, but unfortunately, you should probably be a little bit worried that they're just going to one day abandon this game. So the article finishes off with saying, much like the gaming public, PC Gamer's review was less than enthused about Marvel's Avengers at launch. The reviewers called it a well-told campaign, but said that it was a rather scrawny service game beneath. It's very unfortunate that this is the state of the game. Going back to Metacritic for a second, we can all tell that there was a huge amount of people that were extremely disappointed with this, and I understand there are a couple of people out there who really enjoyed it. Maybe they're just Marvel fans, really big Marvel fans, so they wanted this experience, and a lot of people wanted this experience too, but unfortunately, putting out a game that is going to get a reception with like 2s and 3s and 4s just isn't acceptable in the gaming industry at this point. There are so many alternatives, and especially for $170 million, you should have had a much better product at that point. I wish that this game hadn't failed so terribly, because we lost another superhero game in place of this one, and its quality was just really bad. And this is what happens when you don't put effort into a release. Consumers are getting smarter, and they're starting to not deal with shitty games, and they're not going to purchase $60 shitty games anymore, going to $70 that don't have enough content, and bad games like this will fail even harder. So hey, maybe it will force games to get better, or maybe unfortunately it will just force more microtransactions into into games because companies ultimately want more money, and if they make more money, they can put more money into their next projects, and it just creates this bad cycle. But let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Did you purchase Marvel's Avengers? Are you happy that you passed on it if you passed on it? But if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a like and share it. And of course, if you did not, make sure to give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.